Welcome to Starbound. My name is the Voice Ogre. I'll be your narrator today. But before we get started with the video, let me ask to see if you're subscribed real quick. If you're not, it's fine, but it's free, and it will let you know whenever we post new videos. Thank you. The Grand Council chamber of Proxima Station hummed with the voices of 24 species. Ambassador James Harrington stood at the central podium, his dark hands resting lightly on its polished surface. Light from the nearby binary star system streamed through the vast observation dome, casting prismatic patterns across the assembly.
Earth does not come before the Confederation as supplicants,
Harrington's resonant voice carried through the chamber.
We come as partners, offering our unique perspective as the youngest spacefaring civilization in this quadrant.
In the upper gallery, a hooded figure shifted. The movement was subtle, nothing more than a repositioning that any assembled diplomats might make during a long session. No security AI flagged the motion. No sensor detected the pneumatic whisper of the concealed weapon.
Our technological advancement may not match the Thraxi or the Mindari,
Harrington continued,
but humanity has always.
The projectile struck him mid-sentence. 3 barbed spines that pierced his chest with exact placement. Harrington's eyes widened in shock. He staggered, one hand rising to the protruding spines before collapsing behind the podium. Chaos erupted. Security drones swarmed the chamber while medical personnel rushed to the fallen ambassador. The hooded assassin had already vanished, leaving only the 3 neurotoxin-laced spines as evidence of their presence.
He should be dead.
Dr. Kelvin, the Mindari chief medical officer of Proxima Station, gestured to the holographic display of Harrington's vital signs.
The neurotoxin concentration would have been enough to kill a Lutix warrior twice his size.
The Security Council representatives from 7 species studied the medical data with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion.
And yet he lives,
observed Counselor Thrix, deep in thought.
This requires investigation. The Lutix Empire objects to any suggestion of our involvement,
growled General Krull, his crimson scales bristling.
We have respected the peace accord for 60 cycles.
No one has accused you, General, Counselor Thrix responded smoothly.
But we must understand what happened. I propose assigning a xenobiologist study to this unexpected resilience.
Holographic profiles of potential researchers appeared before the council. Thrix manipulated the display until a single image remained.
Dr. Nath, her work on comparative species physiology is unequaled.
General Quall's vertical pupils narrowed.
A Thraxi researcher, your people are hardly neutral in matters concerning humanity. Dr. Nath's commitment to scientific objectivity is well documented.
Thrix countered.
The council will vote.
The decision was made with little further debate. Dr. Nath would investigate the human ambassador's improbable survival. Dr. Nath stepped to the molecular scanner at the entrance to Proxima Station's medical bay, her tall, willowy frame nearly brushing the top of the doorway. The journey from the Thraxi Science Academy had given her ample time to review the Confederation's classification data on humans. Bipedal mammalian species. Gravity adaptation 1.0. Strength index 3.2. Intelligence measure 7.6. Technological advancement 5.9. Entirely unremarkable in the greater context of Confederation species. Nothing that explains survival against a toxin engineered to kill across multiple physiologies. She expected to find Ambassador Harrington in critical condition, sustained by medical technology. Instead, she found him sitting upright in bed, a data tablet in his hands, engaged in animated conversation with the nurse.
The Lutixian ambassador sends his regards,
Harrington was saying,
along with what I'm told is a traditional recovery gift.
He gestured to a clear sculpture on a nearby table.
Though I'm not entirely sure it isn't some kind of monitoring device.
The nurse laughed, adjusting the settings on an internal regenerator positioned over Harrington's chest. Confederation protocols would have detected any surveillance technology, Ambassador.
Still?
Harrington smiled, though Dr. Nath noted the expression was strained at the edges.
Can't be too careful these days.
The ambassador noticed Dr. Nath then, his hazel eyes assessing her with a quickness that surprised her.
You must be Dr. Nath, he said, setting aside his tablet. Come to solve the mystery of the human who wouldn't die properly?
Dr. Nath lowered her gaze in embarrassment before quickly regaining composure. Ambassador Harrington, she acknowledged with the formal three-finger gesture of Thraxi respect. I've been assigned to investigate your physiological response to the neurotoxin.
Well, I'm an open book,
he replied, then winced as he shifted position. Though, perhaps not literally. I'd prefer to keep my organs where they are. Your humor is unnecessary, Dr. Nath stated, moving closer to examine the medical readouts. The assassination attempt was clearly traumatic. Harrington chuckled, then grimaced at the pain it caused. Doctor, if humans stopped joking because of a little trauma, we'd hardly speak at all after reaching adulthood. His expression became more serious.
I understand that you need tissue samples and medical data.
Whatever helps ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone else, I'm happy to provide. Dr. Nath found herself unexpectedly disarmed by his cooperation. The ambassador's vital signs showed he was in considerable pain, yet he displayed no hostility, no fear of her examination. Your recovery is inexplicable, she said, reviewing his medical charts. By all established models of cross-species toxicology, the neurotoxin should have caused complete system failure. Harrington's eyes met hers steadily. Perhaps your models need updating, Doctor. Dr. Nath's scientific pride bristled at the suggestion, but she kept her tone neutral. Perhaps. That is why I'm here. As she began her initial scans, Dr. Nath couldn't shake the feeling that there was something distinctly different about humans. Something the Confederation's neat categorization system had failed to capture. It was deeply unsettling to a Thraxi scientist raised on a certainty of empirical classification. Ambassador Harrington was right about one thing. Her models would indeed need updating before this investigation was complete. Dr. Nath's temporary laboratory on Proxima Station was a testament to Thraxi efficiency. Equipment that would fill an entire research wing on Earth had been miniaturized and arranged in perfect symmetry around a central analysis platform. The lighting adjusted automatically to the optimal spectrum for her compound eyes, shifting subtly as she moved from one workstation to another. She controlled the cellular scanner with careful movements, her six-fingered hands moving over the controls as she examined Ambassador Harrington's tissue sample for the 5th time. Impossible, she muttered, her eyes flashing a deep green, frustrated. The human cells were entirely normal, structurally unremarkable compared to other mammalian species. Their regenerative capabilities fell within standard parameters. Nothing explained how they resisted a neurotoxin specifically designed to disrupt the cellular integrity of any carbon-based life form. Dr. Nath input a command to begin another scan sequence, this time focusing on mitochondrial activity. The advanced quantum microscopy revealed the intricate dance of cellular respiration, but again, nothing extraordinary. A soft tone announced an incoming communication. Dr. Nath tapped her wrist device, and Ambassador Harrington's face appeared in a holographic projection. Dr. Nath, he greeted her, now dressed in a formal Earth diplomatic uniform rather than medical attire. I'd like to introduce you to someone who might help your research. Dr. Eleni Papadopoulos arrived from Earth today. She specializes in human trauma recovery. Dr. Nath's upper limbs stiffened in the Thraxi expression of dismissal. I appreciate the offer, Ambassador, but I require no assistance from human researchers. My methodology, it might benefit from perspectives outside standard Confederation protocols. Harrington finished smoothly. Dr. Papadopoulos has studied human resilience for 15 years. At least, hear what she has to say. Before Dr. Nath could formulate a properly diplomatic refusal, Harrington continued. We'll meet you in the observation deck in 1 hour. The transmission ended. Dr. Nath sighed in annoyance. Humans were frustratingly persistent. The observation deck offered a panoramic view of Proxima Centauri's binary stars. Their light filtered through advanced shielding to protect the diverse retinal structures of Confederation species. Dr. Nath arrived on time to find Harrington already there with a woman whose wild mess of black curls seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. Dr. Nath, Harrington performed introductions. This is Dr. Eleni Papadopoulos, leading researcher in trauma psychology from Earth's Mediterranean Institute. Dr. Papadopoulos extended her hand in the human greeting custom, which Dr. Nath acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head but did not reciprocate. Humans insisted on physical contact in social situations, a practice Dr. Nath found both unhygienic and unnecessarily intimate. Ambassador Harrington has shared your preliminary findings, Papadopoulos said, withdrawing her hand without taking offense. Or rather, your lack of findings. I've only begun my analysis, Dr. Nath replied stiffly. Comprehensive cellular mapping takes time. Perhaps you're looking in the wrong place, Papadopoulos suggested, her brown eyes warm but direct. Have you considered that what you're seeking might not be exclusively physiological? Dr. Nath tried to control her shock. You're suggesting a psychological component to toxin resistance? Surely such a scientist as yourself understands how fanciful that is. And yet, Harrington interjected gently, your established principles can't exactly explain why I'm standing here. Papadopoulos activated her own data tablet, projecting a holographic display between them. These are recovery rates for human patients suffering severe trauma with and without psychological support systems. The difference is statistically significant across all demographic categories. Dr. Nath scanned the data with rapid comprehension of her species. The correlation was indeed remarkable. Humans with strong emotional connections and positive psychological outlooks recovered significantly faster from identical injuries in most cases. Correlation is not causation, she noted, though with less certainty than before. True, Papadopoulos acknowledged, but it's worth investigating, isn't it? Especially when your current approach has yielded nothing. Dr. Nath considered the proposal. Adding psychological assessment to research parameters represented a significant deviation from Confederation methodologies, but the Thraxi prized results above all. If this human perspective offered insights, scientific integrity demanded she explore it. Very well, she conceded. I will incorporate psychological factors into my research design. Harrington smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way Dr. Nath was beginning to recognize as genuine. Excellent! Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a diplomatic reception to prepare for. I hope you both attend. The reception hall of Proxima Station was adorned with luminous decorations favored by the Mindari, creating constellations of light that drifted slowly amongst the assembled dignitaries. Representatives from 17 species mingled in the carefully calibrated atmosphere, discussing matters ranging from trade agreements to the recent expansion of the Rift Nebula. Dr. Nath observed from a quiet corner, nursing a glass of Thraxi mineral water. Her attention focused on the human contingent, particularly Ambassador Harrington, who moved through the crowd with remarkable ease for someone who had nearly died days earlier. The humans present displayed a puzzling confidence. Though physically smaller than many species and lacking obvious advantages like the Lutix's multiple limbs or the Mindari's telepathic abilities, they engaged as equals. The human scientist was explaining a concept to a towering Roxian philosopher. A human cultural attaché was making a Mindari diplomat laugh, a feat Dr. Nath had never witnessed in her 112 years. Surprising, isn't it? Dr. Papadopoulos appeared beside her, following her gaze. We're the new kids on the galactic block, but we don't act like it. It's irrational, Dr. Nath replied. Your species has achieved interstellar travel only in the last century. By comparison, the Thraxi have been traversing the stars for over 3 millennia. And yet, Papadopoulos gestured with her drink. There's Harrington, discussing quantum entanglement theory with the Mindari Minister of Science as if they were old colleagues. Before Dr. Nath could respond, her enhanced hearing caught a fragment of conversation from across the room. 2 Lutix military officers stood partially concealed behind a decorative pillar, their crimson scales almost blending with the Mindari lighting effects. Concerning pattern in their conflict history, one was saying quietly, the simulations confirm it. General Krall has reviewed the classified reports. The other replied, these humans don't respond as expected to superior force. They increase their resistance levels rather than yielding to the more dominant opponent. The General believes preemptive measures. The conversation abruptly ceased as the officers noticed her attention. They moved away with natural casualness, but Dr. Nath's scientific curiosity was piqued. What had they discovered about human behavior that concerned them so deeply? She glanced back at the assembled humans, seeing them with new eyes. Perhaps there was more to this unremarkable species than the Confederation's classification system had captured. Perhaps, as Dr. Papadopoulos had suggested, their power lay somewhere beyond the realm of conventional measurement. The transparent dome of the Arctic Research Station offered an uninterrupted view of Earth's polar landscape. Beyond the protective barrier, pristine white stretched to the horizon, broken only by jagged blue crevasses that caught the low sunlight. Inside, human researchers moved with steady competence through temperatures maintained just above freezing. Most species in the Confederation require environmental augmentation to work in these conditions, Dr. Nath noted, her breath forming clouds in the cold air despite the thermal layer she wore. And yet humans operate here with minimal protection. Dr. Papadopoulos nodded as they watched a researcher calibrate sensitive equipment with bare hands. This station's considered relatively comfortable. We have permanent settlements in far more extreme locations. They had spent the last week traveling from the northern ice caps to the sweltering equatorial megacities, where temperatures soared and humanity crowded into massive urban structures. Each location demonstrated environmental adaptability that contradicted the Federation's adaptation index for humans. Your cities in the Qatar Peninsula reach ambient temperatures of 50 degrees Celsius, Dr. Nath said, consulting her datapad. The Mindari cannot survive above 40 without full environmental suits. Yet humans conduct commerce, create art, and build communities in these conditions. We adapt, Papadopoulos replied simply. It's what we do. The Neural Trauma Rehabilitation Center in Geneva housed patients recovering from injuries that would permanently disable most species. Dr. Nath followed Dr. Papadopoulos through the ward, recording extensive observational data with her ocular implants. This patient suffered complete severing of his spinal cord 18 months ago, Papadopoulos explained, introducing a young man operating an exoskeletal walking frame. Conventional Confederation medicine would classify his condition as terminal mobility impairment. And yet he walks, Dr. Nath observed. Neural interface technology? Partially, Papadopoulos confirmed. But the technology only works because of neural plasticity. His brain has rewired itself, creating new pathways to control the interface. The man grinned up at them. Next month, they're upgrading me to the autonomous model. And then I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Dr. Nath's datapad chimed with an alert. She discreetly checked the notification. Preliminary results from Ambassador Harrington's latest tissue samples. Still nothing that explained his survival according to conventional models. They moved to the next patient, a woman missing 3 limbs. Mining accident on Mars, Papadopoulos explained. When she arrived, her psychological evaluation suggested profound depression and potential suicide ideation. The woman was instructing a group of similarly injured patients in what appeared to be an artistic expression using modified prosthetics that created 3-dimensional holographic patterns. Now, she teaches post-traumatic growth techniques, Papadopoulos said. Many patients here experience what we'd call the adversity quotient phenomenon. They develop beyond their previous capabilities. This contradicts all established recovery models, Dr. Nath stated, her scientific certainty wavering. Trauma should diminish function, not enhance it. For most species, perhaps it does, Papadopoulos agreed. But humans have developed something different. We see adversity as a chance for transformation, not just damage to be repaired. As they continued through the facility, Dr. Nath struggled to reconcile these observations with the Confederation classification systems. Humans were categorized as a mid-tier species with moderate resilience. Yet the evidence before her suggested something the classification couldn't capture, a psychological dimension to physical recovery that simply couldn't be quantified. The historical archives beneath the old United Nations complex had been converted to quantum storage systems, but retained their impressive architecture. a reminder of humanity's propensity for preserving their past while embracing technological advancement. Dr. Nath navigated the holographic interface, searching for historical data on human recovery patterns. She needed empirical evidence, something that would translate her observations into terms the Confederation Science Council would accept. Her six-fingered hands controlled the virtual controls with careful movements, sifting through petabytes of data. As she accessed a section on historical recovery from planetary disasters, a subroutine in her personal research algorithm detected an anomaly, a data pattern encrypted with the archive's transmission protocols. Dr. Nath paused. The encryption signature wasn't human. It matched Lutik's military communications. Her scientific curiosity overrode her hesitation. With a few subtle manipulations of her personal decryption implant, a tool standard for Thraxi researchers but unknown to her human hosts, she extracted the hidden data stream. The contents materialized in her private visual field, invisible to any observers. Three-dimensional schematics of Earth's orbital defense systems, surveillance reports on human military installations, detailed analyses of population centers vulnerable to targeted strikes, all of it being silently streamed to some distant destination. And a header that sent a chill through her exoskeleton. Containment Protocol 7. Implementation Timeline. Dr. Nath quickly closed the file as Dr. Papadopoulos approached. "You found anything interesting?" the human psychologist asked. Dr. Nath's scientific objectivity that had defined her career now collided with an unexpected ethical dilemma. The Lutiks were planning something catastrophic, and she alone possessed the knowledge. "Dr. Nath, are you all right?" Papadopoulos' concern seemed genuine. "Yes," Dr. Nath responded, her voice modulated to project calm. "I've discovered some unexpected data patterns in human recovery statistics. I need to analyze them further." As they left the archives, Dr. Nath's mind raced with implications. The Lutik's military, including General Krull, who sat on the very security council that had assigned her this research, was actively gathering intelligence for an attack on Earth. The assassination attempt on Ambassador Harrington suddenly appeared in a different light. The question that troubled her wasn't scientific, but ethical. What was her responsibility with this knowledge? Thraxi researchers were trained to observe, analyze, and report without intervention. Interference violated the core principles of her profession, and yet as she watched humans going about their lives in the busy Geneva streets, displaying the same resilience and adaptability she'd observed throughout her visit, Dr. Nath found herself unable to maintain her clinical detachment. For the first time in her distinguished career, she considered the possibility that scientific objectivity might not provide the correct answer. The diplomatic corridor of Nova Europa Station orbited Earth at an L5 Lagrange point, its transparent structures capturing and refracting sunlight in patterns designed to be aesthetically pleasing to multiple species. Dr. Nath sat at a small table in a secluded corner of the station's arboretum, surrounded by plant species from 17 worlds carefully arranged to coexist in an artificial environment. Across from her sat Felix Vorn, a Thraxi operative whose official title, Cultural Liaison, was widely understood as a cover for intelligence work.
"You understand the implications of contacting me?"
he asked, his voice modulated to frequencies below the hearing range of nearby species. Dr. Nath's eyes remained steady.
"I do."
Vorn examined the data storage device she had passed to him.
"This contains the Lutik's communications you discovered." "Copies only. The originals remain secure in my personal encryption."
His eyes widened with surprise.
"That was either very wise or very foolish."
He pocketed the device.
"I can confirm your suspicions. General Krull leads a nationalist faction within the Lutik's military. They've been observing humanity with growing concern since Earth's first faster-than-light voyage."
"Why would humans concern them? Earth poses no military threat to the Lutik's empire."
Vorn's eye color deepened. "Not currently, no. But Lutik's military doctrine is built on preemptive action. They're not evaluating growing capabilities, but potential trajectories."
He leaned forward.
"Human technological advancement over the past century exceeds predictive models. More concerning to them is what they call the response inversion pattern.
Meaning?
Most species, when confronted with overwhelming force, capitulate. Humans historically do the opposite. They unify and fight more intensely when odds become more desperate.
Vorn's mandibles clicked softly.
For a species that bases military strategy on predictable responses to force application, humans represent a troubling anomaly.
Dr. Nath processed this information against her observations.
They fear what they cannot predict. Indeed. And they believe humanity must be contained before achieving full Confederation status, which would grant Earth protection under the Mutual Defense Protocols.
The implications were clear. Ambassador Harrington's assassination attempt had been meant to delay Earth's admission process. When that failed, more drastic measures were being prepared. What will Thraxi intelligence do with this information? Vorn's tried to seem unfazed.
That depends on what you do next, Dr. Nath. Your position as an objective researcher grants you access no intelligence operative could achieve.
Understanding dawned. You want me to continue my research while gathering evidence against the Lutics?
The Confederation Council would require definitive proof before acting against a founding member species.
Vorn confirmed.
Especially with accusations this serious.
Dr. Nath felt the weight of the decision before her. Scientific objectivity had been her guiding principle since her earliest education. To deliberately manipulate her research for political purposes violated everything she believed about scientific integrity. Yet the alternative was to watch a species with remarkable potential face destruction because of fear. I need to think, she said finally. Vorn stood.
Don't think too long, Doctor. According to your discovery, Containment Protocol 7 has already been initiated.
The Grand Chamber of the Confederation Science Academy on Alpha Centauri B-3 stretched upward in graceful spirals. Its architecture reflected the Mindari philosophy that knowledge ascends towards enlightenment. Hundreds of the galaxy's most prominent researchers filled the tiered seating, the diverse morphologies accommodated by adaptive furniture. Dr. Nath stood at the central presentation platform, her data projected in holographic detail above her. She had spent 3 days preparing this presentation on human resilience, carefully crafting it to reveal enough to be scientifically valid while omitting her most significant discoveries. The human capacity for psychological adaptation appears to directly influence physiological recovery processes, she explained, highlighting neural scans for the rehabilitation center. Where conventional methods separate mind and body responses to trauma, humans demonstrate a connection that cannot be ignored. She proceeded through her findings with thorough attention, noting how human cells appeared to respond to physiological and psychological states in ways not observed in other species. The evidence wasn't conclusive, but it suggested an avenue for further research, one that might eventually explain Ambassador Harrington's survival. As questions came from the assembled scientists, Dr. Nath noticed a delegation of Lutix military observers in the upper gallery. General Krall himself sat among them, his yellow eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. When the presentation concluded, Dr. Nath returned to her temporary quarters and immediately secured her research data with additional encryption methods. The preliminary findings she shared were now public knowledge, but her complete data, including her discoveries about the Lutix conspiracy, remained her most valuable insurance. Her communications device pinged with an incoming message from Dr. Papadopoulos. Fascinating presentation. Ambassador Harrington sends his congratulations and would like to discuss his next steps when you return. Beneath the message lay an innocuous data packet, easily overlooked unless one knew to search for it. Dr. Nath carefully extracted and decrypted it to find a warning. Communications monitored. Return delayed. Unusual Lutix activity near Earth. Exercise caution. Before she could formulate a response, a presence at her door triggered the room's security alert. Dr. Nath composed herself, adopting the neutral demeanor expected of a Thraxi scientist, and opened the door. General Krall filled the doorway, his massive frame requiring him to duck slightly to enter. His crimson scales covering his body bore the intricate patterning of a high military rank, and all 4 of his muscular arms were adorned with ceremonial blades.
ostensibly decorative, but undoubtedly functional.
Dr. Nath,
His voice rumbled from deep in his chest.
your presentation was most illuminating.
General Kroll, she acknowledged with forced politeness. I'm surprised the Lutix military takes interest in xenobiological research. His vertical pupils narrowed.
We take interest in all potential threats to Confederation stability.
He moved further into the room, his presence overwhelming in the confined space.
Your analysis of human resilience raises questions about their classification within our species hierarchy.
Science often challenges established classifications, she replied evenly. That is how knowledge advances. Krell's upper right hand moved to a data device hanging from a chain around his neck.
I have data that might contribute to your research. Lutix biological response patterns that have never been shared with the scientific community. A comparative analysis might prove illuminating.
Dr. Nath recognized the offer for what it was, both a bribe and a test. That would be an unusual collaboration.
These are unusual times.
The General's eyes locked with hers.
The question is whether a scientist of your reputation wishes to be remembered for genuine discovery or for political entanglements.
The threat lay beneath his words, clear as a toxin in clean water. He knew she had discovered something. My only interest is scientific truth, she responded, her eyes fixed steadily on his.
I hoped you would say that.
His mandibles clicked in the Lutix expression of satisfaction.
Because truth has consequences, Doctor, especially when shared carelessly.
He moved toward the door, then turned back.
Consider my offer. The future of your career, perhaps of Thrax and Lutix relations, may depend on your discretion.
After he left, Dr. Nath stood motionless, reflecting on her growing inner turmoil. The ethical dilemma she had faced had just become significantly more complex. The Lutix knew she had discovered their plans, and General Kroll had made it clear that her silence would be bought or enforced. She would need to decide quickly where her true loyalties lay, with scientific objectivity, with her career, or with a species whose remarkable resilience had begun to earn her reluctant admiration. The emergency alarms at Proxima Station wailed with dissonant harmonics designed to alert all species, regardless of auditory range. Dr. Nath rushed through the crowded corridors, her tall frame allowing her to see over the chaotic press of beings evacuating to safety zones. A massive explosion had rippled through the station's lower engineering section. Preliminary reports indicating a coolant malfunction, but Dr. Nath's suspicions ran deeper. The timing, 3 days after her return from Earth, seemed far from coincidental. She rounded a corner and stopped abruptly. Before her, a tableau of desperation unfolded. A structural collapse had trapped several station residents beneath twisted metal and shattered composite materials. Station security personnel held back a crowd of onlookers while awaiting emergency response teams.
They'll never survive until help arrives,
A Mindari diplomat murmured beside her, his voice resonating with the musical undertones of a species' grief.
The atmospheric seal is compromised in that section.
Before Dr. Nath could respond, a group of humans pushed through the crowd. They were maintenance workers, not emergency responders, wearing only basic protective gear. Without hesitation, they assessed the situation and began organizing an impromptu rescue operation. We need lift support on the left flank, a woman with the maintenance insignia called out. Torres, Kumar, get the portable atmospheric generator from level 4. Within moments, the humans had established a perimeter and begun successfully and carefully accessing the trapped victims. They worked with coordinated efforts, passing tools and communicating in shorthand that suggested effective teamwork rather than random chance. Dr. Nath watched, transfixed, as they entered spaces filled with toxic smoke, emerging minutes later with survivors.
The rescue shouldn't have been possible with their equipment and their numbers, and yet they continued, pushing beyond exhaustion, refusing to abandon even those who seemed beyond saving. One human male emerged from the wreckage carrying an injured Lutix child, the human's protective mask given to the young reptilian despite the obvious respiratory distress this caused him. Another crawled repeatedly into a space barely large enough for her sight frame to reveal personal artifacts important to a rescued Mindari elder. When the professional emergency response team finally arrived, they found most of the work already complete. 17 lives saved, many of whom should have perished in the conditions. Dr. Papadopoulos appeared by Dr. Nath's side, her face smudged with soot from assisting the rescue. "Now do you understand?" Dr. Nath suddenly came to a profound realization. "Your power isn't physical," she said slowly. "It's your connection to others." "Yes." Papadopoulos nodded. "We push beyond our biological limitations when others need them. It's not just that we help each other. Many species do that. It's that we grow beyond ourselves to do so." As the rescue concluded and the crowd dispersed, Dr. Nath felt a key shift in her understanding. The Confederation's classification system measured quantifiable attributes, strength, intelligence, technological advancement, but it failed to capture this quality, this willingness to exceed all reasonable expectations when connected to a purpose greater than self-preservation. She suddenly understood why the Lutix feared humanity. Human unpredictability wasn't a flaw in their psychological makeup. It was a feature, allowing them to respond to challenges in ways that defied conventional strategic analysis. And in that moment, watching humans comfort beings from species who had joined the Confederation millennia before Earth civilization began, Dr. Nath recognized that she could no longer maintain her scientific detachment. She had become invested in humanity's future. "Your behavior has become erratic, Dr. Nath." Papadopoulos stood in the doorway of Dr. Nath's laboratory, concern evident in her expression. The past 24 hours had seen Dr. Nath working feverishly, securing data, sending encrypted transmissions, preparing contingency measures. "I'm merely completing my research," Dr. Nath replied, not looking up from her data console. Papadopoulos moved closer. "You haven't slept in over 30 hours. You've cancelled 3 meetings with Ambassador Harrington, and station security noted that you accessed restricted communications channels at 0300 hours. Dr. Nath shifted in discomfort, surprised that her activities had been monitored. She underestimated human attentiveness. "Dr. Nath," Papadopoulos' voice softened. "I'm not here as a colleague right now. I'm here as someone who's concerned. Whatever you're involved in, whatever you've discovered, you don't have to handle it alone." The statement struck Dr. Nath with an unexpected force. In Thraxi culture, problems were solved through institutional channels and hierarchical structures. The notion of personal assistance with professional difficulties was foreign and even inappropriate. And yet, here was this human, offering support with no evident agenda beyond concern. Dr. Nath hesitated, her scientific training warning with an unfamiliar instinct to trust. Finally, she secured the laboratory with privacy protocols and turned to face Papadopoulos directly. "What I am about to tell you violates multiple Confederation security protocols," she began, her voice low. "It may place us both in significant danger." Papadopoulos nodded solemnly. "I understand." Dr. Nath revealed everything. The Lutix conspiracy, General Krall's threat, the evidence she had gathered through communication with Thraxi intelligence. As she spoke, she realized that this was the first time she had ever shared a professional burden with another individual. When she finished, Papadopoulos was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, "Why tell me this? Why not maintain your scientific objectivity?" "Because," Dr. Nath replied slowly, the realization forming as she spoke, "I have
come to believe that objectivity without moral consideration misses the greater purpose of wanting to learn more about and celebrate life. And because
She struggled with the unfamiliar sentiment.
I have come to respect your species.
Papadopoulos smiled, a warmth in her expression that crossed species differences. And then we'll figure this out together. First, we need to warn. A soft ping from Dr. Nath's monitoring system interrupted her. The frequency pattern was unmistakable. The conversation was being recorded.
The laboratory's being monitored.
Papadopoulos' expressions hardened.
Then we've just compromised ourselves.
She moved swiftly to the door.
We need to find Harrington immediately.
They exited to find the corridor empty. Unusually so for the busy research section. A premonition of danger flashed through Dr. Nath's mind.
We should not take the main transport system,
she warned.
Agreed.
There's a maintenance shaft 3 sections over that leads to the diplomatic quarter. They moved quickly through increasingly deserted corridors. The station seemed abnormally quiet, the usual bustle of activity replaced by an eerie stillness that raised Dr. Nath's alert instincts. When they reached the junction leading to the diplomatic section, they found their path blocked by 2 Lutix security officers, their crimson scales gleaming under the station lights.
Dr. Nath,
one addressed her formally.
Your presence is requested by General Krall for a priority research consultation.
The transparent lie hung in the air between them. Both Dr. Nath and Papadopoulos recognized the situation for what it was. Detention, or worse.
I'm afraid I must decline,
Dr. Nath replied with forced calm.
Ambassador Harrington is expecting our report on human resilience factors.
The ambassador is currently unavailable,
the second Lutix stated, his hand resting meaningfully on his sidearm.
He's been called away for an emergency diplomatic consultation.
Papadopoulos tensed beside her.
What emergency?
That information is classified.
The first Lutix responded flatly.
Now, Dr. Nath, you will accompany us.
As they spoke, Dr. Nath's enhanced peripheral vision caught movement behind them. 2 more Lutix security personnel moving to cut off their retreat. They were trapped, and Ambassador Harrington, the human they had sought to warn, was already in Lutix custody. Dr. Nath met Papadopoulos' eyes and saw understanding there. Whatever happened next, their discovery had accelerated the Lutix timeline. Containment Protocol 7 had ramped up the implementation stage, standing at the breaking point between peace and interspecies conflict. The command bridge of General Krall's warship hummed with activity as officers prepared for what would either be remembered as a necessary security operation or the start of an interspecies war. View screens displayed Earth's orbital defenses and the positions of Confederation peacekeeping vessels, all soon to be irrelevant if Krall's plan succeeded. Dr. Nath and Papadopoulos stood under guard, watching as Ambassador Harrington was brought onto the bridge. His formal attire was disheveled, and bruising around his face testified to enhanced interrogation techniques. Despite this, his posture remained straight, his eyes alert and evaluating.
Your plan has failed, General,
Harrington stated calmly.
The moment you seized the Confederation ambassador, you guaranteed intervention.
General Krall's mandibles clicked dismissively.
The Confederation moves slowly, Ambassador. By the time the Council authorizes action, Earth's defenses will be neutralized and your government will have accepted our terms for peacekeeping occupation.
You've miscalculated,
Dr. Nath interjected.
I transmitted evidence of your conspiracy to multiple secure locations before you captured us.
Krall's vertical pupils narrowed.
A scientist to the end, Dr. Nath. Always believing facts will triumph over force.
He activated a communications screen.
Begin the operation. Target Earth's primary defense installations first.
Alarms suddenly blared throughout the bridge.
Transmissions detected,
a Lutix officer reported urgently.
Someone is broadcasting on all Confederation frequencies.
Krall whirled, his forearms tensing in rage.
Impossible! This vessel's communications are secured!
Dr. Nath exchanged glances with Papadopoulos. Neither had initiated a transmission. And then movement caught their attention. Ambassador Harrington had somehow worked his wrists free from their restraints and reached a communications panel. "You're right about one thing, General," Harrington said, his voice steady despite the Lutic's security personnel converging on him. "Humans are unpredictable." Before they could reach him, the broadcast activated, transmitting evidence of the Lutic's conspiracy across all Confederation channels, while simultaneously sending warning signals to Earth's defense networks. Chaos erupted. Krall bellowed orders as the security team subdued Harrington with rapid effect, but the damage was done. The conspiracy exposed, the element of surprise lost. In the chaos, Papadopoulos moved with unexpected speed, creating a diversion that allowed Dr. Nath to access a data terminal. Within seconds, her research findings on human resilience were added to the broadcast. Not as scientific data, but as for context why the Lutics feared humanity's potential. As the security forces recaptured them, the view screen showed Confederation peacekeeping vessels changing course, responding to the unauthorized military action by a member species. General Krall stood over his prisoners, rage emanating from every scale.
You've merely delayed the inevitable. Humans remain a threat that must be contained. Every species in the galaxy will see the truth, as do I, and do as I have done.
"You still don't understand," Dr. Nath replied, her compound eyes steady. "What you fear isn't humanity's potential threat. It is that they represent a form of power your species cannot comprehend. The power of hope against all odds, of connection beyond self-interest. This makes them unpredictable to you, the most dangerous trait in an enemy." Before Krall could respond, the bridge doors opened to admit a contingent of Confederation security forces, led by Thraxi intelligence operative Vorn. The conspiracy had been exposed, and the immediate danger neutralized. Later, before the assembled Confederation Council, Dr. Nath presented her completed research. Her findings redefined how the Council understood power itself, not as dominance or capability, but as the ability to overcome limitations through hope, connection, and perseverance. "In humanity," she concluded, "we have encountered not just another species, but a mirror reflecting what we all might become when we embrace our vulnerabilities, rather than fearing them. They have shown us that true power lies not in strength or technology, but in the refusal to surrender, even against impossible odds."